right, tonight's judge is Johanna Siegmann. I'm saying that right, I hope.
Johanna, yeah.
Johanna Siegmann.
With an H, yes. That's
Yes.
good.
Johanna's interest in photography began in 2008 in the aftermath of a bout with breast cancer. As part of her journey, she joined DP Challenge, which served as her education. It was the creation of an image for one of the site's challenges, which prompted her into a career in photography. In the first few years, she had 4 solo shows and 7 group shows. Was selected as an artist in residence by the National Park Service for a project in Mojave National Preserve. Was both a finalist and received honorable mentions from over 18,000 entries 2 years running for the Urban Photographer of the Year photo contest, and led a How to Work with Models workshop for Julia Dean's Photography Workshop School. For over 8 years, she was the photographer of record for the Urban Investment Group at C.B. Richard Ellis, one of the world's largest commercial real estate brokerage firms, and provided photo coverage for other major brokerage firms, including Cushman and Wakefield, Colliers International, and Grubb and Ellis. She has worked numerous TV and film sets, providing behind-the-scenes coverage, most recently for Koreatown Ghost Story, which swept awards every major short film festival, and has been picked up by Paramount for development into a feature film starring Margaret Cho. Her images have been featured in numerous magazines and publications, including the Royal Photographic Society Journal, Los Angeles Times, and Vogue magazine. So let's give a good welcome to Johanna, and I appreciate her judging tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's get on with the show now. All right. As we know, we have 2 categories tonight. First one is Candlelight. And for that, we have 30 entries. We have 5 places and 3 honorable mentions. And to start the show. Oh, by the way, Johanna, the images should be in the same order that you viewed them online, with the exception of the ones you pick for winners. They'll be taken out. So you'll see them at the end.
Okay.
So if that helps you with your notes.
Will they be on the screen so that we
Yes.
can record?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's fine. Yep.
Okay. First up is Sorrow by Patricia Garrett.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Just before we even get started, I just wanted to say briefly that really great entries all around, but that in judging, anytime you enter a competition, the people who are judging is a very subjective thing. And it really depends on the background of the photographer and all that sort of stuff. So entering is the thing to do. It's not about winning, it's about entering, because you never know what somebody's taste is going to be. When I judge themed contests, especially if it's not like a pre-study or an open competition, if there's a theme, to me, and the way I judge is how well did the entry represent the theme of the challenge. So that is the most heavily weighted, and right after that, I like innovation and technical issues. So those are the things that I tend to look at when judging. So having said that, I really like this image a lot. I found that it had a lot of good, interesting objects, and it had great focus on the flowers. Now, having said that, I think that it's a little bit wide. It could have benefited a bit from the crop. This image is also a little bit tilted, and I feel that the arrangement's a little bit cluttered.
Okay. Next up is Welcoming Lakshmi, Goddess of Wealth, Connie Frisbee Wood.
So I think this is either in India and Nepal. I'm not quite sure. And I've been to both countries and I absolutely love it. For me, the whole ritual of candles is great. And this is a really interesting environmental portrait. That being said, I don't think it really satisfies the challenge, because the candlelight portion, even though it's an important element of this image, is really so small and dim that it's a minor element rather than celebrating candlelight.
Next up is A Wheat Dram, Dow Smith.
I love the title. I also feel that this is a really nice balance between elements. I really like the vibrant colors here, and even though it's blown out and out of focus, it is very clear that candlelight is dominant over this scene. That being said, I think that the overall lighting is a little bit broad and not specific, even though it does cast a really nice shadow reflection mix in the lower left. And I really am kind of distracted by that blue line highlight on the left side of the front of the glass.
Okay, next up is Lighting a Candle, Patricia Garrett.
So this is a classic, really classic image. I think that it has a nice depth of field. It really has really nicely controlled highlights, which is really hard to do when you're doing a low light level image with some really bright elements. So that was really nicely handled. I feel that the bottom right candle at the very bottom is distracting. I don't know what your editing rules are, but that could have been cloned out really easily or cropped out somehow. I also find that the way that the hand is holding it's like this backhanded candle lighting pose seems a little bit awkward to me. And for some reason that it just draw me to that. And also there's this red, deep red, orange red cast throughout the image, which I think dulls the impact.
Okay, next up is Book Lore, Sally Wilsey.
So this is a really nice tableau, and it has all of these really interesting objects in it, and I really wanted to peruse all these really cool objects. For me, I think that the candle is bright enough to hold its own, even though it's way off to the side there in terms of composition. But I feel there's a slight tilt to this image. It needs more light on the subjects. I feel that there's all these interesting objects, but you can't really see them. There's a lot of loss of detail in the darkness, and it seems like it could have been cropped a little bit on the right to make it a little bit more even with the crop on the left. And and I like animal butts, but it seems really odd to put the elephant's butt towards the camera instead of his head.
Next up is Petal Flame, Marguerite Hill.
So this was a great point of view. It's unique. Very few have this from above type of so kudos for out of the box thinking in that way. And there are really nice shapes with the circle of the jar entrance, and it looks like a big smile. That being said, I think the focus, it's got missed focus, and the focus is on the lower portion of the jar and not on the rim or the flame. And the flame shape, I feel that they could have chosen a better frame, that there would be a more interesting flame shape, since that is the predominant element in the image.
Next up is Happy 30th, Sean Sullivan.
Sorry, I was getting a sip of water there. This is a really great family portrait, environmental portrait. It has great energy, a lot of expressions. The look on this little child's face is priceless. You can see the wonder and expectation and excitement and questioning. But the overall image has this very strange magenta cast to it, which is not warm. So it's an odd color choice for me. I also feel that if the cake was a little bit closer to the child, it could have been cropped. The whole picture could have been cropped tighter and been a much more intimate shot.
Next up is Lighting Candles, Ray Hendrickson.
So this is, as you can see, this is a popular take on it. This is a very nicely balanced image. It's like perfectly split down the middle between the hand and the candles, and the weight of the two sides is equal. The hand is really lit nicely. I like how just the center of it is lit up. So it's like this cocoon of light surrounded and framed by the rest of the hand. This is a much more natural hand pose as well. Some minor distractions, like I feel like the background's a little bit distracting, and the focus seems a bit soft on most of this image.
Next up is prayer candles, Donna Funk.
So this is a very interesting arrangement. I really like the linear progression, like monks headed to or from prayer meetings or something. So that's kind of cool, you know, and even the shape of the flames, like little monk hoods and stuff like that. But this image was severely underlit. I have a feeling that the highlights, that was an effort to control the highlights, but it resulted with the whites and the highlights being clipped. I also don't understand why the main tall candle in the back wasn't lit, looking down, overlooking these other candles. I think there was a missed opportunity here. And I'm not really sure about this very, very narrow crop.
Next up is floating candles, Paula Keefe.
So when I opened up this image, I have to confess, I thought I was looking at egg yolks and some kind of stone crab thing happening in a bowl. And I thought that was really an interesting choice. But of course, obviously, the floating candles are really wonderful. It's I think the issue for me is that I'm not quite sure what kind of instrument, what kind of camera this image was taken in, but the image quality is inferior, and as a result has a lack of detail. I find the arrangement a little odd. Like I said, the pine cones with the branches looks very spider crabby to me. And this also has a very strong magenta red cast to it. I feel that this could have benefited much more from a more directed lighting rather than something quite so generalized.
Next up is strumming, Kim Koza.
So this is a really beautiful image. I loved it. It's got beautiful light control. It's very directional. You can see exactly where the light is coming from. The subject is interesting. It shows the point of view. And I just love that curve at the bottom of the guitar. That's really, really nice. But the cons for this for me were that it's kind of an odd crop. The whole thing has kind of an orange cast. And because the candlelight is implied here, this doesn't say candlelight to me.
Next up is After Your Dreams Come True, Johanna Kaywood.
This is another beautiful portrait, really lovely pose. It's clear a lot of thinking went into this because the background was a part of this. The colors are really, really nice as well. The one thing that keeps this from being a stellar image in my mind is that it's missed focus. The focus seems to be on that tree in the background, which could have given great bouquet, but instead seems to be the focus point.
Next up is Working by Candlelight, Sharon Silversmith.
So this is a great desk. I want that desk. I think this is another interesting point of view, like the other candle one from above. This is a not often explored point of view, and I really like using it. Also, looking up is a great point of view that a lot of people don't use. And I think the objects in this image are also compelling and really interesting. For me, the issue is like one of the previous ones that in trying to manage the highlights, they've clipped all the whites and highlights. So it's a very dim image, and the focus is rather soft on everything.
Next up is Lighting a Candle, Dan Steen.
this is to me, this could have been a finalist. It's a really beautiful environmental portrait. It's a great location. I think this sort of image for me suffers from what I call generalization. All the lighting is even, all the focus is even. So everything, it's too general. Had we had a shallower depth of field and had the first two girls in focus and then everything else falling off, if it had been lighter in the front and then the shadows getting deeper as it gets further away from the camera, that would have helped focus the eye of the viewer. As it is, my eye wants to go all over the place and look at everything instead of just in the front. There's also, it's oversaturated orange everywhere. You could have brought that in more to just immediately around the candle lighters.
Next up is We Are Worthy of Love and Joy, Johanna Kaywood.
I love these kinds of setup photos, the creativity people do with books and paper and stuff like that. I just love it. And these shapes, it's a heart, it's a ribbon, it's a bird flying, it's a thing with a flame nose. I don't know, it's really creative, and it has really interesting color and palette, the color palette. It's a very evocative image, and I really like that the candle is front and center. It doesn't feel like it's lighting anything so much as just being present. So it's touch and go with, is it a candlelight entry or is it just a candle entry? The highlights are just slightly clipped here, but otherwise this is a really strong entry.
Next up is Hindu Evening Prayers, Nepal, Connie Frisbee-Wood.
So I love Nepal. I've been there before. I think this woman is the embodiment of the colors and the joy that that I felt everywhere I went in that country. She looks like someone who has a great personality. I feel though that there are a lot of near misses on this image. The expression to me is very tentative and not joyous. It looks like it's between takes or before or after the take, was expected. I find the background very distracting and not necessarily very attractive. The blown highlights, I could go either way with that, with the blur, with the hand ringing the bell and the flame in her hand, but everything is just near miss. Everything is almost there.
Next up, The Altar, Janice Pritchett.
This is a very cool shot. I love the thought and intention that went into this. Really great setup. That bouquet is to die for. It's really the colors, the patterns, the distance. It's really, really well done. All the colors in here are really, really nice, and the objects and the arrangement are great. Now, having said that, dead center Buddha is out of focus. So that would have need to be fixed. And I think the blacks are just a little too inky for me.
Next up is Glowing Black-Eyed Susan, Kim Koza.
This is another one like the guitar one where the lighting is implied. And because this is such a specific, it's candlelight, so it can't be any other source. And this to me doesn't say candlelight. It's a great, unusual point of view. I love the subject, but it just does not imply candlelight to me.
Next up is Menorah, Linda Thompson.
So this could be a professional photo. I think it's really well focused. I think it's evenly lit there, but those same things also bring some dings to it. I don't know where to look in this image. The menorah is gorgeous. That background is spectacular. I'm thinking those are electric lights because they're they seem dimmable, or I'm not quite sure how you achieved the flames of those. They're clearly not natural, but uh, they're evenly lit, so there's no highlights out of the way. I feel the doily, everything is so symmetrical, but the doily is off center, and one side's draping down longer than the other. But everything is in focus, so the eye doesn't know where to go. I think if it were me, and I understand this because the background is so gorgeous, that I would want it in focus too. However, if the focus is going to be on Candlelight, perhaps I would have made the focus on the menorah and then made the background slightly more out of focus.
Next is a representation of Jesus at St. Pat's, Fred Moody.
So for this image, this is, I feel like I'm looking at Disneyland. They have these, do you remember the Wheel of Progress? Like there's these scenes.
Yes.
Yeah. And this feels like one of those scenes in a rotating show. And I love the complementary colors in here. I think that is really lovely. The lighting is really focused, so it makes us look in at the main subject of this, even though there are interesting elements throughout. But I feel like the candles are a really minor component in here, and they are clearly not lighting the scenario. So it's kind of a mixed bag for me as to whether this satisfies the theme or not.
Next up is Tiny Candlelight, Sean Sullivan.
So this is, if I were a bride, I would want this in my bouquet, in my wedding album, because it's just such a beautiful bouquet. I really like how the light against the bouquet from the candle, it's clear that that's where the light source is. So this is a really clear example of candlelight being a main element in this image. I do feel, however, that the total removal of all yellow makes the image a little bit sterile. Maybe it could have removed it could have been more isolated, like where the candle light is on the bouquet might have retained a little bit of the warmth and then cooled off the further it got from the flame.
Next up is Christmas Carousel, Janice Pritchett.
So what a cool carousel. I can't tell exactly what it is, and man, does it fly, because that would be so cool. I guess it spins because of the heat from the candles. What a great artifact. I loved that. And I really think the lighting on the poinsettias behind it, that branch of poinsettias, that to me is beautiful. But this is another case where I think we have missed focus. I think the poinsettias are in focus, but the main object is not. It's up in front. It's a little soft. There's a really strong orange cast throughout, and the whites are a little bit clipped on this. Again, I think is an attempt at highlight control.
Okay, honorable mentions. First up, Double Time, Sally Wilsey. Sorry, hold on.
So this is a really fun image. I love it. I'm not quite sure how you did it, whether you just duplicated the image and changed the size of it. Regardless, it's a really interesting idea. It is, I feel the processing with the double exposure, it has great colors, has great tones. I do think that the arrangement could have been a little bit more interesting, or I think that this could have worked with a square crop. I don't think all that extra space above the vase does it any favors.
Next honorable mention, Candlelight and Wine, Donna Funk.
This is really beautiful. So sometimes less is more. A really beautiful arrangement, everything. I mean, just even the details, the fact that the glass is a beautiful, beautiful glasses, are the top lip is the exact same height as the top of the bottle, of the label of the bottle. I love the centered, putting the candlelight front and center, and it's really clearly the light source in this image. What a great choice of wine. And I'm not quite sure what the ribbon is, but the shapes of it, and it's just the subtleness of being there, gives it a great depth of field. Really, really, really nice. I think that the reason this didn't make it to my final is I think it's a tiny bit too dark. I think that if we could have brightened up the center just a little bit more, to give it a tiny bit more pop, it would have been great.
Yeah. Next honorable mention is Holy Light, Fred Moody.
So I love the grunge finish on this. It's very different from everybody else's. So just alone for that, it stands out. The arrangement of the objects is really nice, and the tones and colors, even though they're metallic and harsh, there's also a really nice transition from the golds to the blues, which is what I was trying to convey in other images, where it just seemed like that yellow cast was everywhere. This one shows you exactly where the light is, and its warmth fades off as we move away from the source. That being said, I have a personal vendetta against borders. I didn't like that. The wall itself seems over sharpened to me, so it gets that crunchy look. So I don't think it's a favorable look, and there is a slight tilt to the image as well.
Okay, our winners. In fifth place, Red by Candlelight, Elena Kesey.
So this image is a really beautiful arrangement of objects. It has really nice light. I'm not sure a second source. I believe a second source was used from the right, based on the spine of the book at the right, but I can see how the light falls off towards the sides, but the center where the light candle is nicely lit. You can see the elements really well. My only concern why this is fifth and not higher up is because the saucer appears to be really soft focus, and there's too much of a yellow orange cast everywhere, as opposed to, as I said before, maybe it dropping off into cooler tones as we move away from the flame.
Next up is Backlit by Candle, also by Elena Kesey.
So this is just gorgeous. I don't know how you stood up your pears, but this is just a really beautiful, beautiful image. My heart stops when I look at the outline on the peel of the rightmost slice. You can see the light coming from being lit from two sides. So this tells me that there are at least two light sources here, as do the shadows of the pears. There appears to be two light sources. I like that the stem of the center one is also lit. You can see the stem is got highlights on the inside. There is also really beautiful details in the pears, the pits, the core, the veins, really, really nicely done. And the lighting is very nicely controlled. Again, I would say that the negative comment that I would make, or the improvement that I would make on this image, is it's a very yellow cast. Everything is yellow. So I think if you could remove some, the pears could be yellow, and then remove some from the wood or something like that to isolate them a little bit more.
In third place, Steps, Joe Catronio.
And this is excellent lighting control. This looks like a professional image. Really, really nicely done. The elements, the arrangement. I love the flame flares, like the starbursts. I'm on the fence about the point of view. I think this is really good. I think it could have come down a little more and been straight on. It might have been, I'd like to see what that would have looked like. It might have been a stronger. That's a great looking little box on the top. the stairs. It is also, again, this is a comment generally through a lot of the images. It has a very strong red magenta cast throughout.
Okay. And second place, 5 Candles, Joe Catronio.
I love this. I love the disembodied candles because together they are enough. I don't need to see what else is there because as a subject, they're strong enough as a grouping. Really nicely arranged, really beautiful tones. And to achieve that kind of tonality and color variation in such dark circumstances is a really nice technical achievement. Really, really well done. I love the vivid and varied colors, the lovely flares on the flames, just like the spirit of flame coming out of the candles. I think that my only little nit is that I think the frontmost candle, the shortest one, is just slightly soft.
And our first place winner, Christmas Candle, Linda Tomasulo.
Congratulations. I loved this image. It was just radically different from everybody else's. It's clear a lot of work and thought went into this. The tones and the colors are great. The bouquet is breathtaking. The depth of field is really wonderful. I like that it fills the frame. It creates this mood sprinkled with magic. And for an image like this to come up with some kind of constructive criticism is really, really hard. But at this point, I'd be nitpicking and tell you that there's a slight tilt to the left.
Congratulations to our winners, all good images. Everybody did very good. So let's move on to assignment 2. Assignment 2 was Solitude. We have 41 images. We have 5 places and 4 honorable mentions. Without much ado, we're right on to it. First up, Fishing at Sunrise, Patricia Garrett.
So this is a really pretty picture with really yummy colors. It looks like candy to me. It's really pretty. It's a really nice compositional balance between the solid and the liquid, the sky and the ocean. Really, really nice. I think that the light and colors seem just a tiny bit muted to me. And I think that the lack of detail in the rocks makes such a large element uninteresting. If there could have been just even the tiniest bit of because there is some there, but it's not enough to make out what's going on there. So it's just this really big black blob on the left side. I think the other thing is I know that the bird was included as a point of interest, but in this case, the bird is larger than the human figure. And I think that it becomes a distraction, and I think it fights with the human element in the image.
Next up is The Castle Amongst the Sunflowers, Johanna Kaywood.
So one of the things that I try to do as a photographer is to think outside the box. And I think that this is a very important exercise that everyone must do is, to take a challenge and, because we've been doing photography for several hundred years now, and it's, we try to be more creative and stuff. And so we try and push the envelope. However, it feels to me that this is a really interesting technique. It seems like it's a double exposure. I'm not sure, but I feel like this is in the wrong challenge. I'm not sure what this has to do with Solitude. So this does not meet challenge for me. I'm not a fan of the colors. It seems a bit jarring. So it's a fascinating image. I just don't think it's right for this challenge.
Next up is Alone, Kim Koza.
This is great. I love seeing tiny human elements in breathtaking, vast expanses and interesting places. And I think that this is a beautifully balanced image. The human placeman and its reflection in the lake really anchors the shot. I think that overall the image is a bit dark and murky. It could have used a bit more brightness. It also has some odd magenta cast throughout. I think it could have been a little bit warmer.
Next up is musical Solitude, Joe Catronio.
I love environmental portraits. That's really, really nice. I really think the textures on the wall behind her are really interesting, and the leaves in the water add the background remains interesting. It's not just there. And you've really isolated the focus really well. You've isolated the subject with great focus. That being said, I think the horn is really distracting and oddly positioned with the bell just facing that becomes that's the thing my eye goes to, is just the bell of the horn. And since her face is somewhat obscured by her hair, there's not enough interest in her face to draw me there.
Next up is Alone, Johanna Kaywood.
So first of all, I'm very jealous of anybody who has fog. I live in Los Angeles and we get fog once a year. And when we do get fog, every photographer in LA is running around taking pictures in the fog. So I'm very jealous. This is a beautiful silhouette. This is really great light control, glorious fog. I love that the background trees on the left have a hint of a voice, as if calling to their fellow tree, come back. Really nice details in that silhouette, and the road disappearing off to the right is a really nice vanishing point and point element of interest. I just wish it was a slightly wider crop. The tightness of the crop just feels like it's strangling this beautiful creature.
Next up is Peaches, Marguerite Hill.
It's a very cute dog. I feel that, and it doesn't meet the challenge for me. He doesn't look solitary. I'm not sure what the shot is, honestly. It's a very cute dog though.
Next up is Infinity's Solace, Sally Wilsey.
Titles are great. I really like your title. I think those are important sometimes. This is a beautiful ultra-wide drone landscape, or you were way up on a mountain someplace. Really excellent placement of the human element in that tiny little space on the mid bottom right. I feel like the colors were really pushed oddly in this image, especially the blues, like dehaze was used too aggressively or something like that. And the magenta reddish water is a little off-putting to me.
Next up is Dusk at the Lake, Ray Henriksen.
There is something really classic, like this is a memory or a slide or frame from a vintage movie, like from the 60s or something. It's very evocative. There is definitely a serenity about this place, and this could either be dawn or dusk. It's either way. It's very tranquil, very nice vintage feel. I'm not sure. This almost gives me the impression of being like a pinhole image. It has that kind of quality, and with the vignette, which I know is applied in post because I can see that, but it has that kind of feel. But I think that the focus is too soft on this.
Next up is Contemplation, Claudia Jakubowski.
Excellent environmental portrait. Really nice balance of elements here. The tree on the left, the steeple on the right, and the human smack in the middle, balancing. It's almost like a seesaw between all these elements, and the human anchoring the center there. I don't know if it's just my screen, but there's this odd magenta green tinge to a portion of the sky above the steeple area. And also I feel like the human facing away from the camera, it seems to me that this person is more distracted than in a state of contemplation. So also the light is a bit flat to me. I think it could have used tiny more brightness.
Next up is Lady in the Park 2, Thomas Whitmore.
This is a really strong street photograph. There's a lot of pathos here. I can feel her cold, his cold, their cold, the person's cold. I'm not sure if they're male or female, obviously. Um, I see that, to me, it's street photography is really challenging because of isolating the subject. And you when we do street photography, we either take in a tableau of everything that's going on, or we're trying to capture a story of a specific thing or individual. And I feel that this image is neither. I can see that the background was blurred in post because there's artifacts around the edge of the bench and around the edge of their head. But it's not enough blur to remove the distracting elements of the car.
Next up is Morning Swim, Patricia Garrett.
Man, this is, I really vacillated on this one because it's more fog. You know how I feel about fog. Really beautiful. I can't tell if it's warm morning fog or freezing morning fog. And if it's freezing morning fog, why would anybody want to go into the water? But I loved the framing on this. The leaves at the top are really made it magical to me. I don't know why those resonated so strong with me. And the centered placement of the human is really, really great. Very few ripples, so it added to the tranquility and the isolation and solitude of here. If it had been me, I would have cloned out that rock and clothes and just made it the shore and him and those leaves, and this would have been in the top 5. It's also slightly murky, so just a tiny bit more brightness. You know, I'm just talking a smidge just to make it pop a tiny bit more.
Next up is Lone Tent, Connie Frisbee Hood.
So when one of the things that as photographers that we need to do is help the viewer focus on what the thing we want them to look at is. And I feel like we get very excited when we have all these processing tools and filters and things we can throw at the image. And this feels like that's what this image is like. Everything in this image is sharpened and saturated and clarified, and so it wasn't until I went back and saw the title that I realized there was even a tent there. So had we, I think there's also this big yellow cast that goes on across the entire image. If we had removed some of the yellow and just made the tent be the yellowest thing, it would have drawn our eye there immediately.
Next up is Alone in a Crowd, Linda Tomasulo.
This is such a pretty image. It is like a professional level floral image. Everything is in the even the fuzz on the stems are in focus, and it's clearly a very narrow depth of field because the center flowers are in focus, and the ones right before and right behind are not. And there's that delicious out of focus bouquet in the background that really isolates the flowers. The colors are great. And it wasn't, unfortunately for me, the main subject, which is the one that's alone in the crowd, is the yellow one in the foreground, is is out of focus. It's and it has kind of blown highlights. So it's really amazing to me how the focus really matters, because my eyes went directly to the focused magenta, and I looked over the yellow, which was not in focus.
Next up is the Pacific, Dow Smith.
So, gee, first of all, you're lucky to be in such a beautiful place. I think that's a cypress. I'm not sure. That tree, they look so tortured and miserable, and yet there they are clinging to life next to the most inhospitable places. Really beautiful colors. It's like dawnish and really pinks and pearly colors. I really like it. For me, I think that this is an instance where it was a really dark image, and the colors, the shadows were boosted beyond their range. So it looks crunchy to me, pixelated, and the couple doesn't convey solitude to me.
Next up is Lady of the Lake, Lena Kesey.
A lot of waterside. I'm guessing you guys live near the water somewhere. A lot of waterside images. This is really pretty. I love the portrait aspect of this image. Really nice balance of elements of the really big tree and that bench in between that and the smaller tree. The lines, just enough detail in the shadows to keep that interesting as well. So it's not a 100% silhouette, but it's close enough, and there's enough in the shadows to make it interesting. This has a couple of technical issues, like there's a lot of fringing going on throughout. You might want to look into correcting that in post. And the focus seems to be a little bit soft, but that actually could be a result of the chromatic aberration, the fringing. It makes it look softer than it is.
Next up is Tai Che, Ronald Spear.
So I have to confess, I'm really not quite sure what to make of this image. It doesn't convey solitude to me. It's not a particularly flattering pose. I'm not sure he's in the light, not in the light. So yeah, I'm not quite sure about this image.
Next up is Only the Sound of Cracking Ice, Sharon Silversmith.
So I have taken a million pictures like this because I think it's just such a great way to say there's a human in here without an actual human being in the nature. So it's a really nice POV. I like the diagonal lines and the delineation between the vegetation and the water that seems to be separated by the ice. It's a really nice moment. I can actually hear the stream in my head. I think that I think the thing that keeps it from being a finalist for me is it's somehow lacking in originality, and there's no pop to it. It's not like, oh my God, that's amazing, coming off the page to me. It's a nice moment. It's a great picture, but it's not extra special.
Next is Alone with My Thoughts, Phil Olivo.
This is a really lovely lady. I think that you caught this. This seems to be pretty candid. It's not the sort of pose that I would imagine you would have someone do intentionally. But that sense of solitude is definitely being conveyed. Really nice surroundings, and that stone wall is a great element. For me, this image is oversaturated, and that pose, even though that may be how you saw her, it's awkward. There's something uncomfortable about it to me, and I think it's cropped too tight. Had there been more room around her, it may have conveyed the sense of solitude a little better.
Next up is Tranquility Base, Neil Shapiro.
This is such a great place. Oh my God, I want to live here. I love the lighting here is so beautifully modulated. You can see from the distant the break in the clouds lighting the distant field and the trees over there. It really makes our eye travel around the entire image. There's a lot to take in. I think the colors are really nicely balanced. The for me, I think there's a little bit of wide angle distortion on the woman in the chair on the far right side of the image. So I probably would have tried to correct that. But if I were correcting that, I might have moved the chair itself and the woman closer to the water, because as she is, her placement in the image is a little far to the right edge for me. So she's a little bit off, makes the image just a tiny bit off balance. Bringing her a little bit more to center may have balanced the image better.
Next up is Hot Job, Thomas Whitmore.
So this I would say that this would be a professional photojournalistic image. Definitely something that a newspaper or magazine would run with an article about whatever this event was. I feel very sorry for the people who lost this structure. There's a lot of emotion. This image has really, really great depth of field. But it doesn't convey solitude to me. This person is contemplating something and looking away from the camera. So it's not so much solitude as it is reflection or contemplation, which I guess are synonymous, but it doesn't say it to me. I also think that dehaze was used quite aggressively in this image because it's made that blue cast to the smoke. I think I'm going to guess that the original image was really kind of hazy and smoky. And I think that that might have been a better choice, because now we have the far trees as in sharp focus as that chimney in between the man and the trees. So again, the human element is only isolated by the brightness on him, which is good, but I think that having everything else be slightly more out of focus as it moves away from him would have made that better, and less sharpness on the distant trees and that blue.
Next up is Paragliding, Bertrand Grandel.
So someday I'm going to try this, because I've been to places where I see them puttering around in the sky, and it looks like a lot of fun. It doesn't look particularly comfortable, but it looks like fun. This is a really nice, clean image. It does make me think of solitude up there all alone with just the wind and the seagulls. But it feels a little bit static. There's nothing to imply movement, or there's nothing dynamic about this. It's a perfect rule of thirds image, so that's really great. I think that the horizon and sea portion of it really works well to balance the image. Hold on a second, I got lost. I also think that the light is a little bit flat. It could definitely use a little bit more brightness.
Next up is The Reader, Ray Hendrickson.
So I want to be there. That looks like a fun place to hang out and read. It's just a great location. I think she's all set up for her weekend away. I think that it's cropped too tight, and again, this has very generalized processing and it's oversaturated. So the whole thing becomes important. Everything in the image becomes important. I think it's also, when we're thinking of isolation, I think a wider crop generally favors that, trying to convey that message better than a tighter one like this.
Next up is Feeling Left Out, Sean Sullivan.
So this resonates with me on a lot of levels. I think, it's the story of the little match girl who's always outside looking in. Um, I think this is a really nicely thought out image. Um, and I'm not, she could be looking at her phone and not feeling left out at all. But from the way it's shot, it does give the impression of being left out. It's nicely framed, has really good depth of field. The image does seem overall to be a little bit dark.
Next up is Do Not Disturb, Kim Koza.
So what a lovely portrait. There is a palpable sense of concentration here. It's a very nice pose and intensity, and we can get to see just enough of what he's reading to not be distracted by wanting to look at the book. We get a tiny glimpse of it, but not enough to want to go and leave the boy alone. We want to check out the boy, and really, really great tones. Very clean black and white. This is a really pretty portrait. I feel the little nits of this, now we're getting, into small things. Like the crop kind of bothers me, that cropped out his ear. I think it could have been just that much wider and it wouldn't have lost anything, and we would have kept his beautiful little ear.
Next up is Alone, But Not, Joan Heffler.
So I spend a lot of time in cemeteries. I am fascinated by cemeteries. Someday I want to come visit this one, because this is clearly an ancient one. I see the headstones. They're all different and the dates are great. The angel is such an awesome anchor on the right and is perfect counterbalance with the tree in the back left. Not sure why that red tree has been pushed to the saturation on that. I would have gone the opposite, because that's the focus of it. I opened up this image and that's where my eye went, was to that red tree, which is in the distance, a minimal component and just the most distracting thing. So there are all these other elements that are fighting for my attention, which are the main point of the image. And they're fighting because of that. Red is the thing the eye goes to, no matter what the image is. I think this again is an instance where the same processing was applied evenly to the entire photo, instead of using it judiciously to isolate elements.
Next up is Solitary Sky, Janice Pritchett.
This image, this is a great rule of thirds. It's a perfect reflection shot. This totally says Solitude to me. The where I find it's weaker is it's oversaturated. The blues are just really oversaturated, and the complementary colors are that weird magenta. So it kind of clashes a little bit to me.
Next up is Solitary Monolith, Joe Catronio.
This is a really fascinating location. It has a great mood. This looks like a place I would want to explore on my ex-urban exploration jaunts. I really like the vignetting. It feels like I'm looking at an old architectural image, or something historical happening here. But honestly, it's the vignette or the border, just not both.
Next up is Dreamweaver, Rich Schreibstein.
Like I said earlier, I think street photography it's one of the hardest things around. You think you just pull out your camera and snap a picture, but to get a really, really great street image is a lot harder. I feel like she's a very interesting subject. It's chilly, but she's wearing a mini skirt, but she's sensible because she's also wearing, sneakers, but she's got some kind of a frappe, so it couldn't be that cold out. So it gets me thinking. This image gets me thinking. I like that she appears to be walking on the diagonal line of the sidewalk there. So that's also interesting to me. But this is not a particularly appealing or interesting moment from her, and her expression is unflattering.
Next up is Comfort of a Good Book, Sally Wilsey.
So to me, this really conveys a sense of isolation. That it's a really great domestic moment, and it conveys that ability for someone to be able to be in solitude, even amidst the bustle of a household, of a busy household. So that was a really nice moment that is captured there. But it's an odd angle. There's some lens distortion. And I think that you could have achieved a better sense of isolation by using a very slight vignette.
Next up is Lone Tree, Dan Steen.
I think that's a really cute little tree. And this, I'm guessing this is in someone's driveway somewhere because of the light in front of it. But I don't find this image to be particularly interesting.
Next up is Solitary Bench, Ronald Spear.
We have a bunch of bench images in this challenge, and I like benches like this next to water. Really, they all make me want to be there and sit there and contemplate the body of water in front of me. This has a beautiful balance and arrangement. The trees seem to be engaged in a dance with each other, the one on the left with the two on the right, and the bench all by itself out there, just contemplating the water without paying attention to this dance that the trees are having. It's really an inviting scene for someone seeking solitude. This image also, I feel, could be much brighter.
Next up is Herring Cove Beach, Fred Moody.
This is a perfect image to be in a vertical orientation. It conveys solitude. There is a real that leading line of reflection from the sun to the couple. That's really amazing, and we can still see some rays, coming out from the sun. Technically, it has quite a bit of issues. It's very noisy. There's a lot of artifacts and pixelation going on in this, like it was blown up to be much larger than the pixels that it allows. It's overall a bit dark as well.
Okay, our honorable mentions. First up, Alone at Sunset, Connie Frisbee Hood.
Oh, this is just glorious. This is just beautiful. For me, really, truly, the amazing control of highlights, that beautiful brightness in the distance, and as it's modulated through the rays and the different levels from brightness to darkness to near silhouette at the epicenter. The shapes, the V shapes that the downward slant from the left creates with the downward slight from the right, and the tones really beautiful. The thing that keeps this from being really a perfect image in my head is that I feel like the human element is just a tad too far to the left. So he's almost incidental. And there's so much happening with the river and the lights and the clouds and the glow and the rays that it really took me a moment to find him, because he's almost the same shape as the bushes and the trees that are occurring on the right. If he were in a little closer, maybe almost next to that little tiny bush, I think that he would have been a much more powerful element in this image.
Next honorable mention is Closing Time, Claudia Jakubowski.
So, okay, this is glorious black and white. It's just, there's got this graphic quality to it, amazing textures, really interesting shapes and elements in there. That back wall just barely getting a little bit of a glint of the sun, and the square shapes on the backs of the chairs. All of it is beautiful. And the reason this didn't make it as final for me is that the stools in the front right are just distracting. I don't know if you were able to step a little bit more to the left and avoid them, or to have them cropped out, but they interrupt this magnificent symphony of tones and don't add anything to the image.
And next honorable mention, Shoreline Contemplation, Linda Tomasulo.
So I don't want to get political here, but so that's where Bernie Sanders is. His chair. This is such a fun image, and I love the negative space. And because of his position and the anchor, and even though it's an ultra wide and he's all the way over to the left, it's a really well balanced image. I would sit there in contemplation. It's a great use of negative space, really nostalgic, very nostalgic processing. And that's, but having said that, I'm a little bit torn about the processing being a little harsh. This, yeah, so I'm not sure.
Next up is Walk in the Woods, Sharon Silversmith.
This is just such a great shot. It says it really nice leading lines, vanishing point. It's got great isolation of the subject, really nicely framed and balanced on the left. The colors here are great. It really does convey solitude. The guy's out on his photo walk with his camera, just enjoying, the crisp air, the crunch of the leaves on the ground. I feel like I would have, everything is so detailed. I feel like I might wanted to have just a little bit more detail on him, like the back of his jacket lit just a tiny bit more, just maybe a little bit of dodging.
Okay, and our winners in fifth place, In Sand and Time, Elena Kesey.
So I'm so jealous you were there. What an amazing place. These are sand dunes, I'm going to guess, somewhere. And how does one even pitch a tent on a place like that? It's just incredible place. The amazing location, the lighting, the shapes that you captured with those shadows, but especially those footprints leading to the tents are just exceptional. They weave a story very delicately and really beautiful. And that brings me to my critique, is I feel like this is such a delicate image, and that the processing is just overly aggressive. I think that the elements could have used from a tiny boost, but this is just like really, really aggressively processed.
In fourth place, Cold Stroll, Rich Reibstein.
So, there's some kind of Monty Python-esque Abbey Road sort of magical thing happening here. It's a really fun shot. You've caught him in an active moment, a great stride. So you want to know where he's going. This is a great street shot, which also could have been a setup. So there's that mystery. There's a magical realism treatment to this that I find very appealing, and really great framing and nicely centered composition. I love the tones. I love the music colors. I wish that the wide angle lens distortion had been corrected. And I'm not sure it tells me, it says solitude to me. It sort of says I'm on my way to the pub to not be alone, or something like that. I'm not sure.
In third place, Morning Gold, Janice Pritchett.
Yeah, this is just glorious. This is just a magnificent image. I really can't tell if there's a tiny bit of a tilt to the right. The horizon seems straight, but for some reason it could be the fog that's making it look a little distorted. But man, this just really takes me there. Beautiful silhouette and tones. I can hear the solitude. Just beautiful elements everywhere, from the texture on the pier. And this is one of those situations where I keep saying there, sometimes it's okay to bring out details and textures in the darkness. They don't overwhelm, but they add an element of interest as well. The slight ripples in the water, the sun reflected, fog reflections, the treat of those little weeds in the bottom right. I just really marvelous, marvelous image.
Second place, Lonely Beach Walk, Sean Sullivan.
So, oh my God, this image, I'm like, I don't know what you did here, but geez, it's magnificent. It's just the tones, the diagonals, the rule of thirds. It's like you went through the book and hit every single rule of photography. It's a muted but elegant light. So I don't know how to convey that. So this one is not dim. There's a certain aliveness about this light, even though it is a low light, but it's elegant. It's anchored by these razor sharp humans and those shadows. Oh my God, it's perfect solitude, beautiful image.
Thank you. And our first place winner tonight, no surprise, Separation, Neil Shapiro.
So,
Neil wins a lot.
okay, this is just, so this is a monumental black and white image. There is so much to love here. The subject's expression conveys a sense of isolation and solitude. The image is visually divided into quadrants, 4 separate stories that seem to be sewn together with textures and with words and with shapes. And they all share a space, and they all seem oblivious of each other, and yet they're connected in the most elemental way. The tonal range here is just excellent. I mean, just down to the bottom door, the thing on the left that looks like it says TV. I want to look at every little thing in this image, and I am rewarded with wonderful things to see everywhere I look. If there were any critique, I would say it's the tiniest bit flat. I would add a tiny bit of brightness. And the other thing is that that's wrong with this image is that I didn't take it.
Well, congratulations, everyone.
Congratulations. Everybody did a great job, really great job.
And thank you, Johanna. Your critiques were very, very good and very useful.
Thank you. I hope everybody was inspired by them and knows that I was meant to give them with the idea of always improving, looking at our work with a critical eye. I find that a lot of images that we think are good suffer for something that I call context, and that we are someplace and we take a picture of something and we know the environment and the moment it was taken and some little girl laughing off camera and the sky was this gorgeous color. But when we take the picture, none of that makes it into the picture. So while we may see it as really wonderful, someone who does not have the context of the photo, of the moment where you took that photo, won't see those things. So just remember that when you compose your images, and remember that all of our sliding filters and stuff like that, let's not get lazy and let's use them judiciously and apply them selectively to our images to make them stand out more.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Please feel free to unmute.
I'd just like to thank you. I learned a lot tonight. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Anybody else? Nope.
I very much appreciated the critiques. They're excellent.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, if anybody has any particular questions about their particular image or what I said about their image, I'd be happy to address them. Oh, I guess I should I should allow my video so that people know who they're talking to. Sorry. Hi.
Hey,
Hi.
Hi there.
Hey Neil, how you doing? Congrats.
Hello. I can't really talk very well because I'm on the train here. So
I know. Congrats though on that black and white. It killed me. Just killed me.
thank you. Thanks so much.
And I think too, we had some really excellent images, and some creative images tonight that
Yes.
people really stepped up and tried to fit the assigned topics and work at it. It was really well done.
Yeah, a lot of great
Some
images.
very good images. It's always tough to be the judge.
It is. It really was. I think that there's a lot of talent in your group, and I really appreciated the effort everybody went through to do this. I think that so many of them were really, really close to great, but because we had some that were really, really great, the challenge is then to how do you stand out? How do you make what you can capture better, change your point of view, or crop it more, or don't crop it, or, all these different ways that we can take what we've gotten and make it the best that we can.
Well, thank you very much for your time and your expertise. We really appreciate it.
This was a lot of fun. Thanks, Neil, for asking me. It's interesting for me too, because we must always go back to our beginnings. We must never get so arrogant to think that we know everything, that we go back and to basics, like, why doesn't this work? Why does this work? How did they do that? Yeah, I don't know who did that blur image, the second place blur image, but
That's me.
oh my God, that is,
John, was that intentional camera movement?
No,
is it a composite?
that's a image. Yeah, it's an image where I removed some junk out of it, and I pulled the people off it. Used a
Yeah.
blur
so-
technique on it, and motion blur technique on it, and then layered them back on. And then actually I had to rebuild the shadows because their shadows are very harsh and very thin.
Yep.
So I wanted to give them more of a nicer shadow. That was actually the hardest part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that
Beautiful,
technique
Sean.
before. You did it great, Sean.
Yeah, thank you.
Great execution there.
It was so delicious, and I loved the balance, the thing you created between that utter blur and that total shot. It was beautiful.
The thing I had to keep myself from doing is going too far with the saturation and the colors, and I wanted to keep it sort of muted but still very, soft.
Should make a big print of that.
Yeah, I was tempted to use the sky replacement. I said no.
I'm telling you, we
I
get
was
all
also
of these toys, and we want to use all of our toys.
I was also tempted to put birds in it.
No.
That's one of my things. I put birds in pictures all the time.
Yeah.
Sean's style is definitely not muted, so this was
Yeah.
he had to work at that.
Yes,
Yeah, this one
Very
less
nice.
is more, Sean, I think.
yes, less is more.
And sometimes less is more. Yeah. Sometimes, we put our sliders to 10 and it's like, wow. But then, what you're looking at. But again, this goes back to the sense of context.
Yep.
Is as the photographer, we know what we want people to look at. But if you do not present that through your processing, through your framing, through your composition, all of these things, then the photographer, the viewer is going to go, I don't know where to look next. And we have like this 1 second to just grab somebody's attention, because there are so many pictures out there. There are so many pictures. So it's like, what is it that makes you stop? And that's a really good exercise. When you're looking anywhere, magazines or TV, what is it about an image that makes you stop and look at that image? That's something that's really interesting to practice when you're out and about in the world. So.
Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything
Yep.
else? Last chance.
Okay. Don't forget next week to get your general and monochrome competition images in by midnight Saturday. And we'll see everybody next week.
It was a pleasure. It was a privilege. Thank you all so very much. Have a great evening.
Stay safe.
Thank you, Johanna. Good night,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank everyone.
Is anybody going to the coast Saturday morning?
I'm not.
See smoke. I got all these things from the people like around there, like Maine, and that's a big thing is when they get the sub-zero weather, that's your opportunity for sea smoke.
Nope.
It's probably gonna be cold out there.
Yeah, too cold for me. It's gonna be wind chill.
I did it in Acadia last winter. It was very cold. Ben Williams, you know Ben Williamson with Downey's magazine. Anyone?
Not really. Doesn't ring a bell.
He's very good at that. I'm taking classes with him.
Oh, by the way, my print finished.
Take care, everyone.
All right, talk to you guys next week. Bye.
No.